Hello, and welcome to The Environment Matters, a monthly production of the Environmental Protection Agency in Guyana, where we explore the work of the agency in fulfilling its mandate of environmental management and biodiversity conservation. I'm your hostess, Aretha Ford. Waste management is a global and local environmental issue which requires all of our collective efforts to sustainably address. As you recall, last month there was a massive cleanup in the capital city, and these efforts would have spread across the country. And we applaud these efforts and encourage you to join in, whether you join with an organization or you do a cleanup in your community. So it's only fitting that we take a look at the role of the EPA in managing waste in Guyana. And with me today is Miss Odessa Duncan, Senior Environmental Officer and Head of the Industry and Waste Management Program area. Now, welcome back to the show, Odessa.
Thank you, Arita.
The last time you were on the program, yourself and Miss Cambridge spoke extensively on the management of hazardous waste. So, for the purpose of this program, I want us to zoom out a bit because we were all the way in talking about a specific type of waste. But we want to take a step back and look at waste management on a whole and the role that EPA has to play in that. So let's start first by defining waste.
Well, waste, Arita, is defined as unwanted material. Waste is materials or particles that once something has been used and it no longer has that intended purpose and it has no other use, well, then it is defined or is termed as considered waste, right? Whereby it is sent for disposal, or it can be sent for treatment, whereby we can recover something from that waste and reuse it. So in a nutshell, waste is unwanted materials.
All right. And I think it's important to know that waste comes from every activity. Every activity generates waste, whether it's us breathing, or waste can be generated from the home. It can be generated from industrial processes, whether it's a large manufacturing plant or a furniture workshop right in the community. So waste can come from anywhere, and you did touch on something very important in your definition of waste, in that it can be recovered to be used as something else.
That's correct.
And as we move towards a much greener economy, waste management, I know, will be one of the topics that is going to be at the forefront of that. And in fact, His Excellency would have recently mandated, that the Ministry of Education include waste management into the school's curriculum.
Excellent.
So I know yourself and the communications department will
Excellent.
be involved and very much integrated in that process.
Indeed.
Good. So let's talk about your department and how does EPA fit into the management of waste?
Excellent. So I think it's important for me to really speak to the public and to really clarify that the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, by nature of our work, we really regulate or we authorize the management of waste from a cradle to grave, in a cradle to grave approach. Our regulation aspect focuses on industrial waste, waste from medical facilities, for example, oil and gas waste, waste from manufacturing processes. The regulation does not focus on domestic waste. We do not regulate domestic waste. We do not regulate individuals who are generating their household waste. We do not regulate those. Our regulations process most focus on industrial and commercial activities that generate waste. In our regulation, when I say regulate, Arita, I mean we work with our facilities, provide conditions or provide specification for them with regards to how they should manage the waste that is generated, how we should store that waste, how that waste should be treated, how that waste should be disposed, how that waste should be transported. So we provide the conditions, we provide the specification that would allow them to do so in an environmentally sound manner, meaning that when they do these things, they should have much adverse impact to the environment. We want to reduce that or lessen that. The EPA, in our process, we do not collect waste. We do not have facilities whereby we treat any waste, or we do not dispose of waste ourselves, but we work with those operators to ensure that those processes are conducted according to sound environmental standards.
Yes, thank you so much for making that clarification, because a lot of times we get, complaints, we get some very rude comments sometimes about the officers, why don't we go and pick up the waste?
Yes.
What is EPA doing with regards to this? So it's just a reminder of the
Yes.
EPA's role in waste management. And there are other organizations, other agencies that have a responsibility when it comes to collection and, other aspects of management
Yes.
of waste.
Yes.
So you have it clearly defined for you, dear audience, what the EPA is responsible for. And we, of course, are always happy to participate. If an organization has a cleanup, we can assist in the coordination and in
Yes.
some aspects provide resources that are available at our disposal to help in the successful execution of that cleanup.
Indeed.
Yes.
Indeed.
So let's go into the policies that guide how we regulate waste management.
Excellent. So, there is the hazardous waste regulation of 2000, which is basically our basic document that is used in our process, because that outline how we should regulate, how we regulate. So, our hazardous waste regulation regulate, and it speaks to a cradle to grave. It takes a cradle to grave approach, meaning that it speaks to generators, to the how it is stored, how it is treated, how it is transported, and how it is disposed of. It also outline. It gives it define at which quantity we need to regulate. For example, our regulation clearly indicates that once you're generating waste in a quantity of 100 kilograms or more per month, then is when our regulation applies. So if a facility is generating waste, and the regulation is a hazardous waste regulation, so I'm speaking here more so of hazardous waste. So once you're generating hazardous waste in quantities exceeding 100 kg, then our regulations apply. Now, of course, there's facilities that are generating less than that require some sort of attention. So we will provide that attention, how you can deal with that. But the regulation will not really kick in at that point.
Okay.
Right? So it's important to know that it's a certain quantity, then you will have to satisfy all the requirements of the regulation. And or will require for you to be authorized, be given a permit then. So let's say you're a workshop, right? And I know the workshop, they have oily rags, and they may have a little bit of lube and so on they're working with, and they're generating 2 rags, 3 rags per month. We will not give you a permit for that. That does not require a permit. All right, so it must satisfy that quantity before we will issue a permit. The approach, the EPA, and the two main things I want to focus on, Arita, is recently, because of our oil and gas sector, which is generating a whole new waste stream, and we have to regulate that. The EPA would have taken some steps to strengthen our requirements. We would have worked very hard with the generators, the main generator being Exxon, to develop a cradle to grave waste management strategies. So Exxon in itself, they have developed a cradle to grave waste management plan, Arita.
Great. And I know that's what we are expecting from our operators to take the initiative
Yes,
to come up with strategies, especially
indeed.
given that this is a new type of sector that we're dealing with. So I know that the report is available for view and download on our website.
It is.
So I encourage persons, if this is an area that interests you, you can go and have a read of that report. It's very, very comprehensive.
It is because it speaks to, from the generator's perspective, it's very detailed in terms of the type of waste, your different the types of waste that are generated by your different processes. And as a generator, you must know this, Arita. You're going into an operation or into activity. You ought to plan for the waste that's going to be generated by that activity, by that operation. And so with this cradle to grave strategy or plan, waste management plan that the generators are put forward in, it really detailed the ways, how the waste is generated, what the waste constitutes. For example, if it's hazardous waste, a waste is hazardous by nature of what it entails. So they will have to know, they will have to provide information as what is in that waste to make it hazardous. Is the physical state of the waste. They will need to know what are the hazardous characteristics that this waste is going to exhibit by nature of
whether it's
those,
radioactive,
exactly, or is
flammable,
flammable, or is corrosive. So they need to know all of this, and then they also need to go further now and to see how they're going to store this waste. Of course, based on the hazard characteristics, you will have to have specifications, and you will have a man to store it so it does not become harmful to the environment or to the people who are working with it. And then they also have to indicate to us how they're going to treat that waste. Remember, this is their waste, so they have to take the responsibility and they have to plan for it. Where I'm going to treat my waste, is there facility available in Guyana for me to treat this waste? Do I have to export it under the Basel Convention? We can talk about that later, Arita. Or do I have to develop a system to treat this waste because it is my waste? And so they have to detail that in their plan as well. And then after treatment, is it going to be recovery or are you treating for disposal? So they have to consider all of that as well. And then they will have to detail in terms of Guyana for disposal. Do we have our facility to dispose of hazardous waste? So the question to the Arita is no. The Bosch solid waste landfill, it's a non-hazardous solid waste landfill. So whatever waste is taken to the landfill must be non-hazardous and it must be solid. So therefore our generator now with that information need to ensure that his waste that is taken to the landfill complies with that. So he has to make sure all of the hazardous characteristics are removed from the waste by way of treatment. And so all of this information must be presented in this cradle to grave approach where the generator is taking responsibility for his waste from the time it is generated to the time it's disposed of.
That's great. And I think that this approach should be taken by other sectors, especially where waste can be recovered to generate new sources of income.
Indeed.
So we just want to remind persons who are listening or viewing the program that we have our environmental authorization process. Should you fit into that category of operators who requires authorization, that it all starts with an application. You need to download that application form from the EPA's website, or you can uplift a copy from any one of our offices in Georgetown, Linden, or Berbice. Along with your application, you have the necessary documents, your ID, your business registration, etc. Your project summary, which is important. And I do believe we want to at some point in time touch on the project summary guidelines, so that we receive robust documents that will better help us to aid in our decision making.
Indeed.
And so once we receive that application and we do the necessary groundwork and review, then we move along with the environmental authorization process. And it is important to get authorized not only to look at the health of the natural environment, but ensure that human health is safeguarded as well.
Indeed.
All right. So, Odessa, before you leave, I usually ask if persons, if you want to leave a word of advice to those who are viewing our program.
Um, just to touch on, just to mention that the EPA is developing our waste management strategy, and this strategy really looks at the waste as a comprehensive view of hazardous waste generated across 11 sectors, whereby all of the waste, or I wouldn't say all, but whereby about 94 waste streams have been identified in our strategies, and we have outlined how this waste should be treated. We've defined the hazardous characteristics of those wastes, how that waste should be treated, what systems are available in Guyana to treat the waste, and how that waste should be recovered and disposed of. We're still developing this strategy. And it's important to note that in our development of this strategy, stakeholder consultation is important. And before anything, we definitely will have to have lots of consultations so that our stakeholders and our operators can come on board and they can work with us in this process. Outside of that, Arita, another major thing we did in terms of waste management recently is work with our waste treatment facilities, specifically for treatment of oil and gas waste. It's important for these facilities in their submission to us, which is an emergency management plan in most cases, have to consider the waste acceptance criteria for their treatment technology, because you have to know what your system can treat before you accept a certain kind of waste. So the work and the attention that is being put in by our generator, equal amounts of work and attention is being put in by our treatment facilities. We do have a few, about 5 of them right now, where we have permitted. They also did a lot of work in determining and defining their treatment technologies. They will, so that when the generator take the waste across, they will know which technology is best suited to treat the waste to ensure that the hazard has been removed, and thereby we can safely dispose or recover such waste. So lots of work is going in with between EPA and our operators, and everybody is very excited and everybody is working very hard. I must say the operators are on board, our generators are on board, and we want to we will be moving to include our manufacturers, medical facilities, and all the other industrial facilities, work with them to get them on board as well, so that they can start profiling their waste, and we can move in that manner to ensure that waste is managed according to sound environmental standards.
Great. Thank you so much, Odessa, to you and the officers for putting in that hard work to ensure that our environment is kept in a clean state. So with that, we will take our first ad break. Stay tuned.
Can you come around, please?
Morning. My name is Deborah. I just want to get some information.
Good morning. I am Odessa Duncan, Senior Environmental Officer. How may I assist you today?
Tell me something. They got this man next door by me breaking on this big building, and it's bare asbestos in the roof. I could remember hearing on your TV program that asbestos is dangerous to human health and the environment.
This is correct. The Environmental Protection Act states that any person or facility that is storing, treating, transporting, and or disposing of hazardous waste material must be authorized by the EPA to do so.
Oh, but it's now I'm really hearing about this hazardous waste thing. Tell me something more.
Hazardous waste are waste material with properties that are dangerous or capable of having a harmful effect on human health and the environment, including things like paint, fertilizers, and pesticides, waste oil, and asbestos. These things have the potential to cause cancer, birth defects, kidney failure, and reproductive impairment, with children being at the highest risk. The environmental authorization in this case gives the legal right to transport, store, and dispose of this material in accordance with the EP Act Chapter 2005 Laws of Guyana. This ensures you and your operation and your process is safe for the environment and human health.
So you mean to tell me that all them leftover Christmas paint that I got on in my kitchen sink, I need authorization from EPA to get rid of it?
No, Miss Deborah. These items, once used for household purposes, does not require environmental authorization from the EPA. However, you should still take necessary steps to ensure that these materials are stored and disposed of in an environmentally safe manner.
Thank you so much for the information. I go in and tell him that he needs an environmental authorization. Thank you.
At the Environmental Protection Agency, we believe that the environment is everybody's business. We can start caring for our planet by becoming more environmentally friendly in our everyday actions. Here's what you can do. Dispose of waste in a garbage bin. Clean our drains, yards, and carpets regularly. Take a reusable shopping bag to the market. Support local butchers and farmers to reduce packaged waste. Plant a kitchen garden, trees, and flowers. Compost your organic waste. Conserve water and electricity. Carry a reusable water bottle. These little acts are good for your health and that of the environment. Remember, healthy people work better and achieve more, and together, small actions make a big difference. For further information on how you can help, please contact the Environmental Protection Agency, EPA, Ganges Street, Sophia, or telephone us at 225-5467. You can also visit our website, epaguyana.org, or our Facebook and Instagram pages.
Are you involved in a business or thinking about starting one? Do you know there may be environmental impacts from business activities? According to the Environmental Protection Act of 1996, businesses such as gas stations, rice mills, large-scale agriculture and poultry farms, large-scale mining and forestry operations, hotels, and resorts must be authorized. Persons proposing any of these activities need to submit an application for environmental authorization to the EPA.
Do you have an environmental complaint? Then the Environmental Protection Agency wishes to advise that you can report an environmental complaint at the agency via one of the following. You can call our 24-hour hotline number at 225-5469, or you can drop us an email at complaints@epaguyana.org. Or you can message us on our Facebook page at EPA Guyana, or you can message us directly on Instagram at EPAGY. Please note, when submitting an environmental complaint, you would need to submit the following: name of complainant, that is the person who is making the complaint, the address of that person, a contact number, as well as the alleged polluter, a name for them, or a name of their business, their location, and the nature of the complaint. For further information, you can visit our agency's head office at Ganges Street, Sophia, or you can visit one of the regional offices to make your environmental complaint. You can visit our WIM office in the Quarantine, or our Linden office in the Lynn Building, Mackenzie, Linden. Please note that all information collected from the public will be treated with the strictest confidence. However, complainants should be willing to attend court and testify should the matter require legal action.
Welcome back to the Environment Matters. During the first half of our program, we had Ms. Odessa Duncan, head of the Industry and Waste Management Program area at the EPA, discussing the role of EPA in waste management. And on this half of the program, we want to take a closer look at the litter regulations. In 2013, landmark litter enforcement regulations were enacted to support the EPA in its mandate to protect the environment and to deal with the growing issue of littering, especially in the coastal areas. Since the cleanup of the city, we've seen a number of persons being caught and charged for littering. And with me is Miss Niomi Alsoop, Legal Officer at the EPA, to talk about those regulations. So, welcome to the program, Naomi. And you're one of our newer officers. So, I must say again, a hearty welcome to the EPA. And I hope that your stay with us is a long and very productive one.
Thank you very much, Arita.
Yes. So, let's start with why were the litter regulations conceptualized?
So, the litter regulations were drafted and enacted at a time where littering and illegal dumping in Guyana were very rampant. However, at that time, there were a lot of cleanup campaigns and anti littering campaigns being initiated by a lot of bodies. And so, what was needed at that time were regulations to further solidify the efforts being made by these bodies to achieve the goal of a cleaner Guyana. And so, the litter regulations were created.
Yes, and indeed, I know, the primary objective was really to get Georgetown back to that state of being the garden city instead of the garbage city as it was labeled. So, what are some of the main offenses and the fines and penalties in the litter regulations?
So, one of the first offense that I would like to draw our attention to is the offense of depositing litter in a public place. So that it is an offense if someone deposits and leaves litter in or on any public place, not being a receptacle or in an approved site, right? So that person will be guilty of an offense if they deposit litter in or on any public place other than in a receptacle or an approved site. And the penalty for this offense for an individual is $50,000, and for a company it would be $100,000.
Right, that's a lot of money. A lot of money to pay. If you just drop a sweetie paper or if you just drop the bag. But I think the premise of having a hefty penalty is to discourage the activity from happening in the first place.
Yes, definitely. And it should be noted that someone who is convicted of this offense, right, that person cannot say that there was no receptacle. They cannot use that as a defense, that there was no receptacle at that place.
Great. So I want to bring up something that happens a lot when it comes to littering. Persons pay someone, and it's usually someone of unsound mind or someone who dwells on the street. So is that an offense under the regulations?
Yes, it definitely is an offense. So under the regulations, it prohibits, right, someone who causes or knowingly permits someone else to commit any of the litter offenses, so that person who causes or permits another person to commit a litter offense will also be liable for the commission of that offense. So both that person and the principal offender will be charged.
Good. So, in local terms, if you pay a junkie to dispose of your litter, knowing full well that junkie can turn around at the corner and just dump the bag on the roadside or throw it in the drain, then you would have committed an offense under the litter regulations, and of course, once caught, you will be charged. What about littering on private premises? Because I know some persons might say, well, this is my yard, this is my house, so you really shouldn't come and tell me anything about that.
Well, the act speaks to persons who litter on someone else's premises, right? Private premises. So if a person litters on another person's private premises without the consent of that person, they will be guilty of an offense under the regulations.
All right, and I could be wrong in what I know here, but I do believe that the environmental health officers and assistants have a role to play in helping to manage litter on a private property or private premises. So that's definitely something I know that the EPA would have worked with the NDCs to address, because it is within their mandate to ensure that the surroundings within someone's dwelling does not cause any environmental harm. So, because the motto of the EPA states that the environment is everybody's business, there are some agencies under the regulations that have the authority to enforce. Can you share those with us?
Okay, so some of the other agencies that are authorized to enforce the regulations are the Guyana Police Force, the Harbor Masters, we have the health inspectors, the Guyana Forestry Commission, as well as the Guyana Geology and Mines Commission.
Great. So we're not alone in this fight, and of course we encourage persons, whether it's on an individual, household, or at the level of the business, we encourage you to take steps to reduce the amount of waste that you produce, and of course to not litter. It's something that affects all of us. It's not good for the environment, it's not good for human health. And speaking of the environment being everybody's business, I wanted to touch on the issue of transportation and litter, because that is something we see often. Persons would record a bottle just flew out to this bus. It had to be somebody putting it out there. So what do the regulations say about littering and transportation?
Well, first I would like to highlight that under the regulations, right, it is an offense for the owner of a public vehicle to fail to provide a receptacle within that vehicle, right? So public transportations, the owners must provide receptacles within those vehicles so that persons could deposit their litter in. As well as we have private vehicles, right? And so persons who would deposit litter from a private vehicle onto a public place would be guilty of an offense under the regulations. However, if it is difficult to determine who or which one of the occupants from that vehicle would have deposited the litter, the driver of the vehicle is deemed to have deposited the litter.
Oh my, so this is a situation where Peter pays for Paul.
Yes.
Yes, so we want to ensure that we have at least a bag, if not a small bin, in our vehicles. Or, you could just do like me and stuff it somewhere within that vehicle until such a time that you can dispose of it in the correct way.
Yes, as well as encourage
Yes,
the
of
passengers not to litter.
Yes, most definitely. So in closing, I want to bring up something with you, right? I saw on Facebook someone was asking, it's in relation to one of the stories that was shared about someone who was caught littering. And one of the comments said, well, why don't you just let the person clean up the place that they dirtied? But it can't just happen like that, right? So what happens when a person is caught littering, they're charged, and they're brought before the magistrate?
Okay, so for each of these offenses, there's a penalty attached to it, right? But in addition to that penalty, the magistrate can order that that person clean up the place. But that is in addition to the penalty.
Okay, so it really is the discretion of the sitting or presiding magistrate in
Yes,
your
correct.
terms, to determine what extent or what level of punishment, if that's the right word,
Yeah.
is meted out to the offender. There is an instance, if I am correct, where persons can avoid jail time or avoid having to pay the $50,000, and that is the fixed penalty. So, what does the fixed penalty really mean?
So basically, if someone is caught littering, or you perceive that they would have litter, right, or is about to, what the litter prevention warden can do is issue them a notice, right? So this notice would inform them of the offense that they would have committed, right? And as well as giving them the opportunity to discharge themselves of liability by offering them to pay the fixed penalty, which is $15,000.
$50,000 is still a lot of money. It's not $50,000, but it's still a lot of money, regardless of how you look at it. So to avoid having to spend any money, or having to go before the courts and all of that, why not litter, right?
Yes.
So let's ensure that we take every effort, again, to manage the amount of waste that we produce. There are a number of waste reduction techniques. You can refuse. You can think about, all right, do I really need this product or this item even before you buy it? So we really need to rethink, refuse, and look at reusing. These are all techniques that we can use to manage our waste. And again, as in the case with Odessa, I always ask, what words of advice or encouragement you have for our audience.
Well, definitely, I would like to encourage everyone to comply with the litter regulations. These regulations were enacted so that we could have a cleaner Guyana, that persons would obey them, right? So that we could achieve the goal of a cleaner Guyana. So I just want to encourage everyone to adhere to and comply with the regulations.
Great. That's a good end to the program. Thank you so much, Niomi, for taking time out to join us on the show. And ladies and gentlemen, that brings us to the end of our program. Thank you once again for staying tuned, and do remember to stay connected to the EPA by picking up a copy of the Sunday Chronicle or the Guyana Times, or both, to read our weekly newspaper column. Tune into your favorite television station, NCN and E-Networks, or you can tune into Guyana Today to look at the environment matters and other video productions out of the EPA. Hit us up on social media by liking our Facebook page. We're on Instagram, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Stay safe, everyone, and remember to respect each other and the environment.